Samuel had watched his corn wither under a cruel, cloudless sky. His wife left 2 years ago, taking their daughter to the city. He stayed because his father had died on this stubborn land. The well went dry in June, and the creek stopped running in July. By August, he was boiling his coffee with water from the horse trough. He knelt in his empty field every morning and begged for rain. The heavens remained brass, and his knees grew sore from praying. One evening, a wagon rolled up with a woman holding a forked stick. Her name was Iris, and she dug wells for a living alone. She said, "I heard your land is thirsty, and I can help." Samuel laughed bitterly and said there is no water left anywhere. Iris said the water is there, just deeper than your plow has reached. She walked slowly across his field with the willow branch pointing down. Near the old oak stump, the stick twisted violently in her hands. She said, "Dig here, 20 feet down, and you will drink again." Samuel had no money to pay her, only a spare room and meals. Iris said, "That is enough, because I am tired of sleeping alone." She moved into the small cabin and started marking the dig spot. Samuel picked up a shovel, his hands blistered from months of dry work. They dug together in silence, the only sound their breathing and steel. The first 5 feet were hard clay that cracked like pottery shards. Iris sang old Welsh mining songs to keep their rhythm steady and strong. Samuel found himself humming along by the end of the second week. He asked where she learned to find water beneath the barren ground. She said, "My father taught me before he died of black lung fever. He told me water always listens for someone who believes in it." Samuel stopped digging and said, "I stopped believing in everything long ago." Iris leaned on her shovel and said, "Then believe in my stick instead." They hit a layer of damp sand at 15 feet, a hopeful sign. Samuel scooped a handful and felt the cool grit between his fingers. He looked at Iris and saw her smiling for the first time ever. At 17 feet, a slow trickle of muddy water began to seep. Samuel cried out and fell to his knees in the shallow pit floor. Iris climbed down and sat beside him without saying a single word. The water rose slowly around their boots as they watched in awe. Samuel said, "I have not wept since my daughter waved goodbye to me." Iris said tears and wells both come from the same hidden underground source. He reached for her hand and held it under the cold, rising water. By morning, the well had filled to 3 feet of clear, sweet liquid. Samuel cupped his hands and drank until his belly ached with joy. He turned to Iris and said, "Stay for one more night to celebrate." She agreed, and he cooked the last of his salt pork for supper. They ate by lantern light, and he asked about her lonely travels. Iris said, "Most farmers pay me and then forget my name quickly." Samuel said, "I will never forget your name, not if I live forever." She blushed and looked down at her chipped enamel plate silently. That night, he heard her crying in the spare room behind thin walls. He knocked gently and asked if she needed company in her sadness. She opened the door and said, "I miss my father every single day." Samuel sat on the edge of her bed and said, "I miss my daughter too." They talked until dawn about grief, about loss, about stubborn hope. Iris admitted she had not cried about her father in over 3 years. Samuel said a good cry is like rain for the heart's dry soil. She laughed and said, "You are becoming a poet from digging one well." He said, "You are becoming my reason to wake up before sunrise." The words hung between them like laundry on a windless morning line. Iris leaned her head on his shoulder, and he did not pull away. The next morning, they returned to digging to make the well deeper. At 22 feet, the water rose fast and nearly swept them away. Samuel grabbed Iris by the waist and lifted her to the ladder quickly. She clung to him, and they both laughed at the foolish danger of it. He said, "I almost lost you before I ever got to hold you properly." She said, "You are holding me now, and that is what matters fully." They finished the well with stone lining and a wooden bucket on rope. Samuel filled every barrel and trough, then watered his dead cornfield. He knew the crop was gone, but the land could rest and recover now. Iris packed her wagon on the 10th morning and thanked him kindly. Samuel stood at the well and felt his chest crack open like dry earth. He said, "Do not leave, Iris, because the well will need maintaining yearly." She smiled sadly and said, "I am not needed here anymore, Samuel." He walked to her wagon and took the willow stick from her hands. He said, "Teach me to find water, so I can always find you instead." Iris stared at him with wide eyes that slowly filled with fresh tears. She said, "You want to learn dowsing just to keep me close by?" He said, "I want to keep you close because you brought me back to life." She stepped down from the wagon and wrapped her arms around his neck. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her cracked, dry lips. She whispered, "I will stay for one more season, but no promises yet." He said, "One season is a lifetime when you have been alone too long." They planted a small garden near the well with seeds she had carried. Iris taught Samuel how to read the clouds and the behavior of birds. He taught her how to mend fences and how to bake sourdough bread. The garden grew green and lush while the rest of the county stayed brown. Neighbors came to see the miracle well and asked about the strange woman. Samuel said she is not strange, just brave enough to dig for happiness. Iris overheard him and felt her heart swell like a rain-swollen river. That autumn, a letter arrived from Samuel's ex-wife in the city. She wrote that their daughter had asked to visit her father's farm. Samuel read the letter aloud to Iris with trembling, hopeful hands. Iris said, "You should build a room for that little girl to sleep in." He built a small bed with his own hands, and Iris sewed a quilt. His daughter arrived in October, a shy girl of 7 named Lucy. Lucy looked at the well and asked if it was magic, truly magic. Iris knelt down and said the magic is believing water exists underground. Lucy said, "Papa never believed in anything until you came here." Iris teared up and said, "Your papa taught me that hope is a choice." Samuel watched the two of them laugh and felt his family stitching back together. That night, Lucy asked if Iris was her new mama now and forever. Samuel looked at Iris, who nodded with tears streaming down her face. He said, "Yes, Lucy, if Iris will have 2 stubborn farmers to love." Iris said, "I will, because a well without a family is just a hole." They married in the garden beside the flowing, singing well water. Lucy scattered wildflower petals, and the preacher spoke of living water. Samuel promised to never let Iris dig alone again in her whole life. Iris promised to always find water wherever Samuel chose to stand still. The camera pulls back to show the 3 of them drinking from one tin cup.